Hi everyone, Weethany Hatano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Horsegirl album, Phonetics On and On. Here we have the second full-length album from Chicago band Horsegirl, not to be confused with electronic music artist Horsegirl, or rival indie rock outfits that also have horse in their name like Feeble Little Horse. No, this is a different Horsegirl, one that has been around for several years right now at least, as this album is a new effort they've put together for MATADOR Records and the follow-up to their 2022 record, Versions of Modern Performance. An album that drummed up a decent amount of buzz for them at the time and fit pretty nicely into this trend of kind of very loose, revivalist, slacker rock outfits with a real 90s flair to their sound. Definitely an indie appeal to this album with a few post-punky flares here and there too. And while the songwriting and performances on this record weren't exactly blowing me away, it was a pretty solid debut all around for what it was. The occasional noisy and chaotic guitar passage too. Again, the record wasn't perfect, but there was a somewhat interesting combination of influences going on here that I think made Horsegirl a band to watch into the future. Also, I will say in the lead up to this new album here, the band did a pretty great job of piquing my interest with some really great teasers, and I'm happy to say that I'm enjoying the entirety of this record a lot more than I did its predecessor, due to its weirder sound, a wider variety of influences, and improved songwriting too. However, if you did happen to get onto the Horsegirl bandwagon, due mostly to that slacker rock style that they had going on their debut, that has pretty much been let go of for the most part on this record. Rest in peace to all of the 90s nostalgists, because on this new LP, the band is leaning a lot more into their underground influences that hail from the UK. I will remind people, again, this band supposedly hails from Chicago, and yet they sound like some kind of indie twee pop rock outfit from the late 70s, early 80s that would have made waves on the London music scene around that time, even down to how the lyrics on this record are sung. I'm thinking bands like Dolly Mixture, as well as TV personalities, even groups in that genre from our side of the pond over here like Beat Happening, bands that really have that homespun pop rock sound and a super rudimentary instrumental approach. But then, in addition to that, I'll say some of the guitar work on this thing, while still noisy, is occasionally very minimal, repetitive, especially on tracks where the band is really locking into a groove, like on Switch Over as well as 2468. And moments like this really read to me as being influenced by, you know, any number of classic krautrock albums, or even bands such as Wire that are kind of like, you know, on that early art punk wave, which leads to a rock sound that's very punky and raw and organic, but simultaneously the performances are kind of polite and measured and very gentle on the ears. Some of the more laid-back cuts on this record also ring of like very early Modest Mouse. Meanwhile, the more intimate tracks are earnest, like a Moldy Peaches ballad, something along those lines. Look, I know I'm making like a million comparisons and references here throughout this review, and I don't mean to overload you guys or make this album seem like it's all over the place or that it has like no real voice or vision or focus. In fact, I would like to illustrate the exact opposite here. What I'm trying to say is, despite the band pulling from a disparate array of sounds, they still come through with a very consistent album, and that they have more going on than you might think, given the humble presentation of a lot of the tracks on this record, as they're clearly students of the very cerebral and rudimentary sound that they're trying to pull together here. In the underground, there is like a historical artistic precedent for this sort of thing, and I just happen to think the band embraces this vibe very well. Whether you're talking about the hype tom hits and chord changes all over the intro track, or the creaky string hits that lock in with the rhythm guitars over these super forlorn refrains on in-twos. I've also been loving the spunky and cute grooves and plucked bass on the track Well I Know You're Shy. The adorable lovey-dovey lyrics on that track are really a selling point, and the song also kind of like further digs down into this persistent lyrical theme throughout the record of things being in twos or coming in twos, something I think is also also echoed to a degree on the even more endearing Julie, which is a very sweet slow burner on the album that also seems to be coming from a place that's very crushy, voicing sentiments of wanting to make mistakes with this person, which I think is really cute given that, it sort of frames the idea of love as not always being perfect, having those moments where you are kind of like working through something and struggling, and you still want to be with this person through those times too, not just the good times. Information content is another track that instrumentally is really doing a lot with a little. The melodies on this one absolutely snap, despite the fact that they're not really being held together by much more than these very understated vocals and super simplistic guitar lines and basic drums. Frontrunner is one moment songwriting-wise I'm not super crazy about. I do think the ending fizzles out, but vibe-wise I do think the instrumentation here would fit perfectly for a pensive scene during some kind of 2000s indie film. Sport Meets Sound has more of a rockin' finale to it, though I do think stylistically the band is kind of painting themselves a little bit into a corner by this point in the track list. But the closing track is a very hype finish that has these nice little sloppy, beautiful chord touches from some keys going on with the guitars, which just goes to show how much a very subtle extra layer can do on an album whose instrumentation and sound is very stark, as this really is an album that's like not trying to load too much onto you. But yeah, I've been really enjoying this record. I like the sort of underground, niche, post-punky, twee sound mix the band is working with on this record. They work so well creatively in these very confined limitations, and somehow some very beautiful and fun songs end up blossoming out of the rough, very rough landscape the band builds for these tracks, which is why I'm feeling a light to decent 8 on this LP. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Horsegirl, forever.